Ben's last question is, he wants to know, what day did God create water?
Yeah, well, if he's referring to molecules, H2O, the answer is we aren't told, since the Bible isn't a science book. There's no Hebrew word for hydrogen, for instance. If you're talking about water in the experience of the writer, then somebody might answer, well, that's Genesis 1, 6 through 8, which is the second day. Let me go there and I'll read that just to refresh people's minds. God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. Let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. Okay. Well, you might think, well, this is when God created water right here, the expanse and the up and down and all that sort of thing. Well, that wouldn't actually be correct, because water is presupposed in Genesis 1:2, which is before any of the days are numbered. So we have 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void. Darkness was over the face of the deep. Okay? And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So there's water already there in 1:2. Now, for those listeners who might be new, to me or to the podcast or whatever, I have a whole lecture on Genesis 1 through 3. It's a video, and I will give Trey the link to this video. But Genesis 1 through 3, if we're talking about Hebrew grammar and syntax, is not a linear sequence of events. And what that means is that 1:2, Genesis 1:2, the earth was without form and void, darkness was over the face of the deep, spirits hovering over the waters. That's a parenthetical circumstance that is pre-existent to the first creation act, which would actually be, by rule of Hebrew grammar, and when I'm saying that, I'm referring to the kinds of clauses that are in Genesis 1 through 3. All of that is parenthetical and a pre-existing circumstance to the first creative act, which is in Genesis 1:3. Let there be light. That is actually the first creative act in those 3 verses. And I know this sounds strange, again, to those who aren't familiar with the grammar, have never seen that video. And by the way, don't get intimidated by the topic Hebrew grammar and syntax in a video. What could be more confusing? Trust me. I illustrate it all in English. It's very, very understandable. But because, again, that's the way I'm looking and reading Genesis 1 through 3, the water of 1:2 is therefore part of its pre-existing material. It's prior to the days of creation. And that's a long, maybe convoluted way of saying that the Bible never specifically tells us when water was created. It's just there in Genesis 1:2. Now, verses like Colossians 1:16 make it clear that water was indeed created, and matter is not eternal or anything like that. Colossians 1:16 says, "For by him all things were created. All things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible." Okay? So verses like Colossians 1:16 tell us that everything was created. Okay, we have creator, creation distinction here. The point is just that Genesis 1 through 3 actually informs us that we don't have creation out of nothing in those 3 verses. We have pre-existing material, and water is one of those pre-existing materials. You have to go elsewhere, like Colossians 1:16, for the idea of creation, the initial creation from matter, out of nothing, God speaking it into existence. And again, I know that sounds strange because there's so much Christian talk about creation ex nihilo in Genesis 1 through 3. That is not what the Hebrew grammar and syntax teaches. So don't blame me. I didn't write it. I mean, I'm not the guy who composed Genesis 1 through 3, but that's the way it is. Now, I should add one other note, since we're talking about ex nihilo. I don't want to get any questions about, well, what about bara? Genesis 1 through 3, in the beginning, God bara, bara, the heavens and the earth. Well, bara does not mean creation ex nihilo, and that's very easy to illustrate. In Genesis 1:26 and 27, bara is used of the creation of humanity, is it not? Well, yes, it is. Go look it up. But then in Genesis 2, both the man and the woman are not created ex nihilo. Man is created from the dust of the ground, as we just discussed a moment ago, and woman is created from the side of the man. They are not created ex nihilo, out of nothing. And so that tells you that the bara reference in Genesis 1:26 that describes the creation of humankind cannot mean creation out of nothing, or you have a hopeless contradiction. What makes bara unique, for those interested, is not the idea of creation out of nothing. That's not what the verb means or denotes. You would use bara as a biblical writer to denote an act of creation that only God could do. Only God is the grammatical subject of bara in the Hebrew Bible. Nobody else is. So that's why you would use it. You want to telegraph that this is an act of God and no one else could do this.